What's up, guys? It's your boy Eli here, and today we're going to be talking about a couple of times when the Pokemon anime predicted game concepts that will end up becoming a much bigger deal, and some of these are over 20 years later than when they first appeared in the anime, so stick around to find out about them. Now, the first one that we're going to talk about was originally broadcasted in April 2002 in the 244th episode of the Pokemon anime. And in this episode, one of the main characters, Misty, sees herself chasing an unknown legendary water Pokemon. So she sees this legendary Pokemon, she's chasing it, and this is what it looks like. And if you look at that image closely, suspiciously, that looks very similar to a certain Pokemon we all know and love called Mega Gyarados. But as I just said, this anime episode aired in April 2002, and Mega Evolutions were not released into the Pokemon games until October 2013, over 11 years later. Now, it's entirely possible, and in fact, most likely, that when this art was teased of Misty chasing this legendary water Pokemon, they didn't know they were going to do Mega Evolution, but it's entirely possible that when they decided to do Mega Evolution and they were searching for a design for a water Pokemon, they took inspiration from this episode where Misty was chasing a legendary water Pokemon. And what solidifies this theory even further is that later in the Alola anime, when we see a reappearance from Misty after a really long time, we hadn't seen her since like Hoenn, what Pokemon does she battle with? It's Mega Gyarados. It's like a full circle moment where in the future she had seen herself chasing this quote unquote legendary Pokemon, while Mega Pokemon are said to have quote unquote legendary power. And then so many years later, she ends up having that exact Pokemon she saw in the dream, and it is Mega Gyarados, which was foreshadowed 11 years earlier. Now, another time where the Pokemon anime has predicted the games is in the introduction of Pokemon eggs. Back in the original series in May 1998, we see that in the episode entitled Attack of the Prehistoric Pokemon, the gang discovers a Pokemon egg. And a couple episodes later, that hatches into Togepi. Now, not only had Togepi not been introduced into the games yet at all, in fact, it was a Generation 2 Pokemon, and this was still very early on in the Generation 1 anime. It was actually the concept itself of Pokemon eggs, which was what was foreshadowed because Generation 1 games did not have Pokemon eggs. That was a concept introduced in the Generation 2 games, which would not be released until about a year and a half later in November 1999. So the anime showcased it a year and a half earlier than when it was actually debuted in the games. And as anyone who plays Pokemon knows, whether it's competitively for breeding or anything, Pokemon eggs are a huge, vastly important concept. I mean, that's how you craft competitive teams, shiny hunting. It's a very important Pokemon concept, and it actually appeared in the anime first. Another time that the Pokemon anime predicted Pokemon games was with Pokemon of different sizes. Way back in June 1997, Ash catches a Krabby, and this happens to exceed his party limit of six, so it's sent straight back to Professor Oak, and he calls up Professor Oak to ask where his Krabby is and to see it and everything. And lo and behold, his rival Gary has also caught a Krabby, and when it shows them on the screen, Gary's Krabby is much bigger than Ash's. Now, this is a concept that's showcased multiple times throughout the anime, and it seems realistic. You know, not every Pokemon is going to be the same size. We see it with the Krabby scenario. We see it when Ash visits the Charcific Valley, how there's Charizards that are bigger than his own. So this concept of size difference is nothing new to the Pokemon anime. They've been doing it way back since original series and even into the Johto journeys with Charizard. But in the games, this actually did not appear until Pokemon Go in 2016. So that is over 19 years later that this concept actually officially appeared in the Pokemon games. And in Pokemon Go, it was just a value that could be denoted. You couldn't actually physically see it until years later. Even in Pokemon Let's Go, there was denotions of it's a tiny Pokemon, it's a extra large Pokemon. But it wasn't truly until Pokemon Legends Arceus where you would see alpha Pokemon and other Pokemon that were clearly different sizes. And the most obviously in the most recent Pokemon games, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where you can easily see the size difference of Pokemon ranging over like seven different categories of sizes. So way back in 1997, we saw it with Krabby, and it was kind of more recently officially established in the mainline games in 2022, which is about 25 years later. Now that is foreshadowing. Moving on to the next one, the topic of Pokemon sizes. Something that appeared a lot in the original series was the concept of giant Pokemon. In July 1997, in the original series, it's literally an episode titled Island of the Giant Pokemon, where we see huge animatronic versions of these Pokemon, which we later find out is a theme park that's being designed by Giovanni. But still, there's this concept of these giant Pokemon way back in July 1997. We also, throughout original series, see a giant Gengar, we see a giant Dragonite, and we were like, okay, this is just anime shenanigans. They're never going to actually bring this to the mainline games, are they? Well, lo and behold, in November 2019, we see the debut of Pokemon Sword and Shield. And what is the main gimmick of these games? You got it, Dynamax and Gigantamax, which is giant Pokemon. So obviously, going back to original series, they had no idea they were going to do Dynamax. And in fact, these large Pokemon were most likely not Dynamax. Dynamax is something that is exclusive to Galar because of the Galar particles and the Darkest Day and all that. But it is interesting how they did managed to incorporate this idea of giant Pokemon into not only the games, but later in the anime, in Pokemon Journeys. The ace trainer that Ash is wanting to defeat to become the world champion, main gimmick is using a giant Charizard. So this concept that was teased way back in the Pokemon anime ended up taking precedent in the games and later coming back in the anime as an official concept. So it's just cool to see that full circle moment so many years later returning in the Pokemon anime. And finally, the last one we're going to talk about today is actually a little bit more of a niche one, but it's how Ash won his first gym badge. Now, obviously, Ash goes to his first gym badge and he's battling with an electric type, Pikachu, versus the trainer Brock, who has two not only rock types, but ground types, which are not only resistant to electric, but actually are fully immune. So, how does Ash end up beating Brock and specifically his Onix, which is a ground type? He turns on the sprinkler system in the gym, which causes the Onyx to become doused with water, and then he hits it with an electric attack. Now, for years, we were all like, all right, this is a gimmick. Like, there's no way that this would ever happen in the games. You can't just, you know, hit a rock type slash ground type Pokemon with water and then make your electric attack super effective. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Pokemon Black and White in September 2010 begs to differ because in these games we were introduced to the move called Soak. And what does Soak do? Soak turns the Pokemon that it hits into a pure water type, making it not only able to be hit with electric type moves, but actually weak to electric type moves. So way back in April 1997, when Ash won his first gym badge, he was using the move Soak before it was even officially introduced in the games or even thought of as a concept. But guys, that wasn't a gimmick. The concept of Soak was actively in the anime 13 years before it debuted in the games, and it's what allowed our boy to win his first gym badge ever. So there you have it. That's just a couple of times where the Pokemon anime foreshadowed the Pokemon games, or rather, the Pokemon games took inspiration from the anime. But I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about this. I thought it was pretty cool to see. If you did, please be sure to go drop a like and subscribe. It's been your voice, Z-Light. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.